What's up everyone and welcome to another Warframe video. Today we're going to be taking a look at a brand spanking new frame that came as part of the mainline update, and that is going to be the Queen of Shields, and that's Hildryn. Hildryn completely breaks the norm in Warframe. Right now, pretty much the top most tanky frames are all armor and health based. It just is the way it is right now because shields have always been kind of weak. Hildryn absolutely aims to try and change that. They've been talking about it adding basically shield gating into the game for a really long time now, and that is really when your shields go down to 0, that damage doesn't then immediately bleed over into health, just to try and stop the one-shotting that was happening at sort of sortie level with some enemies. And they've introduced that as a bit of a test as Hildryn's passive. What happens is her shield goes all the way down to 0, she gets like a 3-second invulnerability period, and that basically gives her time to restore her shields with her second ability, or with pizzas, or just to get the hell out of the fight. And that is kind of an interesting way to test the thing. Honestly, it works really nicely. The few times where I have managed to let my shield go all the way down to 0, it has allowed me time to disengage, and just to like either move out of the fight or try and do something different to try and change the fight in my favour, and I really like that. One-shotting is not a fun mechanic, and honestly, adding it in with Hildryn as a bit of a test, because they want to make sure it's not too overpowered. They don't want to just add it into everything and just go, oh, whoopsie, it's too overpowered, and then, you know, that becomes a bit of a problem. But Hildryn is the test for this, and honestly, I think it works really well on her. But obviously, you know, that isn't all that she's about. She has a whole load of abilities too. So let's take a quick look at those. So before I talk about my thoughts on Hildryn, let's have a quick look at her abilities. They're not very difficult, so we're going to whiz through them pretty quickly. First one's Balefire, which basically is going to summon her secondary weapon, and that is going to use her shields to fire bolts of, it says here, bolts of fire. The damage is affected by power strength, the explosion radius is affected by the range mods, and the drain is affected by your efficiency mods. And it is separately moddable, and I'll try sort of show you the build of that in a second. Let's summon our Balefire Charger, and we will summon some level 160 heavy gunners. These are really super high levels, so I'm not expecting a huge amount of damage, but it does do, as you can see, pretty damn good damage. If we keep firing, there you go. It does really good damage, especially when you're modding it for high power strength like I am right now. Like I say, that base damage is affected by power strength, and that is actually very effective. And this is actually the only weapon you can use while in her 4 as well, as you'll see. If I go up in my 4, that's the only weapon you can use while you're in your 4 as well. Modding wise, decided to go with basically straight damage with this one. I don't mod for the charge speed, although that is something you can do if you prefer it. I've got Hornet Strike, I've got the Amalgam Barrel Diffusion because I like the dodge speed. Don't necessarily need this. This is something you could change out with the normal one, but it's something I like. Lethal Torrent for multi-shot. Magnum Force for more damage. The accuracy doesn't really make much of a difference here. Auger Pack for more damage, and then straight Corrosive with 2 dual stats to bring up almost 50% status. 50% status on an AoE weapon is actually not bad at all. And because we're going straight Corrosive, we're not mix and matching any weird procs. We're not going to have any sort of dilution of procs going on here at all. So this is sort of the way I decided to mod it. You can do this a little bit differently if you want to, but this is really the way that I actually thought was kind of the best way to do it. Like I say, really simple ability. Doesn't take much to explain this one. It's her bread and butter, exalted weapon. I'm gonna shoot stuff now. And yeah, if you want to use the charge attack, obviously it is very effective, does a lot of damage. But I also find actually shooting at the floor is actually more effective than shooting at enemies. I don't know quite why. I don't know whether it's something to do with where it sort of spawns the AoE, but it definitely seemed to be a lot more effective shooting it at the ground than it directly at the enemy. But as you can see, those were level 160 enemies, and we absolutely shredded them with this thing. Her second ability is Shield Pillage, which will spawn like an AoE aura around Hildryn. Any enemy inside that aura will have their defenses stripped, and then at the end of the duration will be added to Hildryn as shields and overshields. Now that amount that it drains will be affected by power strength, the duration by duration mods, and the radius by range mods. The other thing this does is actually doesn't get mentioned anywhere, is this will remove any status procs as well. And since she has no health, Toxin and Slash procs can be really, really nasty, so being able to shed those status procs is extremely, extremely important. So we're going to spawn in some Corrupted Heavy Gunners here. Let's drop the level down a little bit just so we don't get absolutely destroyed by them. We're going to head over, just one cast here, and we are going to immediately get like full overshields every single cast. Absolutely brilliant ability. It's a key part of her kit as well, because obviously with her using shields for all of her abilities, absolutely like super important bit of her kit here. But as you can see, it is actually causing a few problems, and that is going to be something I'm going to talk about a little bit later, because this ability, while it looks really, really good, does have a few problems. But that's basically the lowdown on this ability and how it works. Like I say, I'm going to talk a little bit later about her problems and some things that actually don't really help her at all. Her third ability is Haven, and what she does here is she will link to everything in range of her allies and enemies. For every enemy that she's linked to, she will drain shields from them, and she will give them to herself and to her allies. What she will also do is she will give her allies additional shield capacity based on power strength, additional shield recharge based on duration mods, and also will give them her passive as well, which is fantastic, which is the shield gating, which means if their health or their shields reach 0, they will get a 3-second invulnerability window to either get their shields back to maximum again, where it resets, or just to get out of there and to get safe. The enemies that she's linked to, she will also do 200 radiation damage per second on, which is actually very, very good at lower level, which kind of means you can kind of like speed run lower level missions with this, because it is actually good enough damage on some of the squishier enemies to actually be able to use kind of efficiently. So let's not show on heavy gunners, because obviously heavy gunners are not going to be the best to show this on. We're just going to show it on normal. We'll show it on like some crewmen or something, and we'll show what happens when you get linked to this. And as you can see, it does actually do a decent amount of damage, and they're all dead now. So at lower level, you can actually use this as a kind of AoE nuke. It doesn't like scale very well, obviously. 200 damage per second isn't going to scale particularly highly, particularly quickly. And actually falls off at about probably level 40 or something. So it's not great, but at lower level it is something that is kind of useful. But the ally stuff is absolutely brilliant. That giving them their passive, or her passive, the additional shield capacity, the additional shield recharge, really, really makes this ability worthwhile having up pretty much all the time. Her fourth and final ability is Aegis Storm, where she takes off and hovers around in the air, and any enemy in her AoE will get lifted into the air and will be, like every few seconds or so, just have an energy orb ripped out of them, which is brilliant for the rest of your team. Loads of energy generation there. It's also really good crowd control as well, especially if you mod it for range. All enemies will also take damage over time. It's only for like 200 damage over time from radiation damage. Not great. Falls off immediately pretty much, so don't really rely on that. But when you deactivate it, it will she will basically take those enemies that are hovering and will slam them into the ground. The higher you're sort of hovering, the actual more slam damage you do, which is actually kind of interesting, although also kind of useless indoors, because obviously you've got a ceiling and you can't get that height. But you know, it is what it is. So let's quickly show it off against some enemies. Let's just use those 4 crewmen again. I can't remember what level they were. Here we go. Show against these guys. So we're now taking off. There we go. And they're now floating in midair. And I don't think we've had any energy orbs yet. I mean, they're dying because they're low levels, so I don't think we actually generated any orbs there. So let's up their level a little bit, and we will go. In fact, we'll get something a bit tankier, shall we? We will go with some level 100 heavy gunners, because who doesn't love heavy gunners? Heavy gunners are amazing. Here we go. Corrupted heavy gunners, and we will do this. There you go. As you can see, they're now all up in the air. There you go. There's an energy orb for you. So as you can see, you can't use any weapons in the air. You can use your Balefire while you're in it, which is kind of useful. Really good for damage. You can't use your 2 though, which I don't actually understand the point of, but you can't use that. And you can use Haven as well while you're in the air. And then when it's deactivated, she does a slam. So as you can see, also she can pick up energy, despite actually not needing it. But as you can see, there you go. Let's go get some energy back, or some shield, sorry. Let's go up to max height. As you can see, the AoE there actually shrinks because of the height we're at. But if I do a slam now, it does vastly more damage. Well, I say vastly more damage. It does more damage. Let's put it that way. But it actually does do more damage. The movement itself is kind of I don't know, it's kind of restricted to this sort of flying around movement. You can't dash or anything, which I think would actually be really rather nice. But as you can see, this is sort of all you can do. Yeah, you can, like I say, there you go, look. All the energy orbs coming out of them. So it is really, really nice CC, really, really good for energy generation. I just wouldn't really rely on it for damage. Obviously, the abilities are kind of useless for that build, so this is the one I decided on for my Hildryn. Aura slot. It does come with a dash polarity as standard, however I reformatted it to a V. As I was talking about earlier with the shield pillage, because you're actually draining an amount from the enemy, if you then lower the amount of armor, for example, that an enemy has, you're draining less from them. There's less to drain, which means you don't get as much back on your shield pillage. Using corrosive projection actually hurts shield pillage. I really, really wouldn't recommend using it at all. I, however, am using growing power, and that's because the extra power strength is absolutely brilliant. It doesn't trigger on Balefire, which, because it's a Warframe ability, that's not exactly surprising. However, because her 1 and her 3 are both channeled abilities, if you have a weapon with really, really good status chance, for example there, I've got my status, cast my 3, cast my 1, and because they are, channeled abilities, it means that power strength is going to be applied to that ability until the ability runs out. And because they are channeled, you can keep them going, indefinitely. If for some reason it does drop, let's say, for example, you're out of shields, and there we go, so technically we've let it drop here. All you need to do is just recast it. 3, 1, job done. Now you've got all your power strength back again. It's a really, really good bit of extra damage for Balefire. It's really, really good for your 2 and 3. So I would absolutely recommend going with the growing power rather than corrosive projection. Then we're going with extra, massive amounts of power strength. Very, very heavy on the power strength here. Power Drift, Umbral Intensify, Augur Secrets, and Transient Fortitude. Now, duration, for me, I didn't really think actually had much of a good effect on many of the abilities. It does increase the drain. The reduced duration does affect the efficiency on Haven, which is kind of annoying, but it's not too big of a deal. The reduced duration on Shield Pillage just means that you actually bring that overshield to you a lot sooner. And that means, honestly, reduced duration on Shield Pillage actually is probably the best way to go. So that's why Transient Fortitude comes in with that one. I'm using Umbral Intensify. You don't really need to. You can use the normal one, but I'm using Umbral just because I actually do have it. And this is going to give us a really, really big amount of, Shield Pillage on the, Shield Pillage. Look at that, 59%. Which is actually obviously more with Growing Power. Haven gives us like nearly 1,200 extra shields on our allies. Absolutely brilliant. Like, and the damage from Balefire, 1,190, almost 1,200 damage on Balefire. Absolutely brilliant. Like, honestly, I recommend going for power strength on this one. I really do. Then we've got the Stretch and Augur Reach for range mods, just to try and hit as many enemies as possible with R3, and also as many, like, keep our allies going as much as possible as well. Then we've got Streamline, just to make things a little bit more efficient. And then we've got Redirection for Shield, the maximum shield, and Adaptation, because that actually also applies to Shield, which is really, 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 really useful. And honestly, this is what I ended up going with. I tried a whole number of builds, from high duration to blind rage, max strength builds, and this is pretty much what I ended up settling with. Arcane wise, you can sort of do whatever really. I've gone with Arcane Aegis, which is kind of like Grace but for shields. So you regen your shields when you get hit with this, just like Grace does. And I also have Arcane Avenger, which is going to increase my crit chance when I take damage. You can use Arcane Barrier, but I just didn't find it personally to be particularly efficient. I didn't find it procced anywhere near enough. Level, like, 4% chance to instantly restore shields. Yes, it's nice if it procs. 4% chance. Not a great chance. So, I don't know. It's one of those ones that is going to be a personal preference thing. I personally went with Avenger because extra crit damage on everything is amazing. Oh, sorry, extra crit chance on everything is absolutely amazing and can turn non-crit weapons into crit weapons, which is a lot of fun. However, you can sort of mess around with that if you like. This is pretty much the build I went with though, and I absolutely love it. So with all that said and done, we've taken a look at the abilities and the build and everything. What do I actually think of Hildryn? Do I think she's any good? Do I think she needs any improvements? And the answer to that is yes on all fronts. Now, honestly, to be perfectly honest with you, I've had a huge amount of fun with her. Playing her in sorties, playing her in arbitrations, playing her in high-level content, I have been having a lot of fun. Her Balefire does fantastic damage. Her shield pillage is keeping me constantly topped up with shield. The Haven is, constantly keeping my allies alive. While the damage at high level does actually fall off, giving my allies like an extra 1,200 shield is absolutely brilliant. And Aegis Storm, while it might not be, honestly, the best ability, the crowd control is brilliant, and the amount of energy that it does actually give you back, or give your team anyway, is actually really, really useful. Note though that I've said high level content. And this is where I think Hildryn falls down a little bit. At lower level, low to mid level, she struggles. And that is only, well, she struggles against everything except Corpus. Corpus have a lot of shields, which means shield pillage has a lot to deal with. However, low to mid-level Corpus, low to mid-level Grineer have barely any armor, which means that honestly, shield pillage doesn't have a lot to do here, and it can really be a bit of a struggle to keep things going constantly against these low to mid-level Grineer. The same really, well, I mean, I say the same really applies, but she is utterly useless against Infested, because shield pillage does nothing. Nothing at all, because they don't have shields, they don't have armor, so shield pillage does nothing, which is a complete shame, because it means against Infested she doesn't do anything. You have no way of like reclaiming your shields. Your third ability doesn't do anything at all. Your second ability does nothing at all, and that is a bit of a shame, and honestly does hurt her usability. Plus, if you ever use her in a Nightmare mission, she does actually suffer from no shield mode, which basically means you have no abilities whatsoever, which is kind of annoying. Magnetic procs hit her very, very hard, because you lose 75% of your shield, which I know 75% of 5k is still a lot. So what, 1,200 or something like that. But that is a huge, huge hit to your to what's going on. And Aegis Storm, for me, it just doesn't, like, the damage feels horrendous. Like, the damage is honestly not worth modding for. Even when I've got a very high power strength build like I do right now, it's just not worth modding for. It's really, like I say, it's good crowd control and it's good for orb generation, but honestly, it's just not worth. It's just not worth modding for. Interesting point though. Aviator does actually work with Aegis Storm. That's why the Ellis has a depolarity in it, is because actually Aviator does work on it. So you do take 40% less damage if you want to go with the CC build. Kind of an interesting little combo there, but you know, that's one of those things. I don't know, like lower level she really struggles, I think, because you just can't regen the shield like you really want to. Once you start getting into sort of mid to high level, sort of sortie level, then she comes into her own. And that's good because it means she scales fantastically well. Like Balefire does a huge amount of damage even at high level. Shield Pillage is constantly like just removing chunks of shield, removing chunks of armor, and that's absolutely fantastic. But I don't know, that low level performance is a bit of an issue, and I think might need a little bit of a look at just so she doesn't become a top level frame, because realistically for the star map I think she's going to struggle against anything that's not Corpus. The Corpus seem to be okay for the most part, like I say, because they have a ton of shields anyway. But I don't know, it's kind of hard to say. But like I say, I've been using her in like high level content and been loving her, so it's definitely going to be interesting to see what you guys make of her and what my fellow content creators actually make of her. But I think that she does have a few flaws that kind of hurt her performance, and that is a bit of a shame. But at the end of the day, high level frames, if you take her into arbitration, she is going to be super useful, super useful as a support frame. She synergizes really nicely with a bunch of other frames. Obviously Trinity restores all of her shields, plus if the Trinity is using EV with the augment, you have more overshields from that too. There's a whole bunch of different like little synergies that can be done with Hildryn just to like up the performance. But like I say, I think she's a really good frame. I think she's a lot of fun at the higher level. Just that low level performance I think needs a little bit of a look at. Let me know what you think in the comments below, whether you've actually got her already and whether you agree with what I'm saying. I thank you all so much for watching today. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I shall catch you in the next video.